What do you do when you are trying to build a long-lasting career as a creative and you are the product? You have to sell yourself because you are the brand, and you want to build meaningful, long-lasting relationships with your clients that also bring you in enough revenue that you're able to live the life that you want to live. How do you do that when you have to sell yourself, when you have to sell your way of viewing things, your perspective, your style of storytelling? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. This is episode 195. Today, my guest is Stewart Cohen. Stewart is a video producer and storyteller and has been for decades. And we talk specifically about relationships, about the connection and collaboration it takes to build a career out of your creative ability, out of storytelling. You have to collaborate with folks on your production team and also your clients, and also where and how you and who you distribute your stories with. It is constant collaboration, therefore it has to be constant connection, therefore it has to be constant communication. And the only way that you can do all of those effectively is to understand how to show up every day and tell stories differently. And what I mean by that is differently because of the way you view the world and your work in the world, but also differently based on the audience, based on the client, based on the message that needs to be told. It is a constant ebb and flow. It is a constant evolution. Stewart and I talk about how you continue to grow after you've been doing the same thing, essentially, for years and even decades. You have to seek out those opportunities. You have to work just as hard at building those relationships and building your network and continuing to evolve as an artist, as a storyteller. You have to work just as hard as actually doing the work when you're actually producing, when you're shooting, when you're editing. It's all of these things. Far too often, I see artists, creatives, storytellers just want to go do their art and not want to do the business side of things. And that ain't how it works. It just isn't. It's art, it's science, it's head and the heart. It's both. It's the emotional, it's the intellectual, it's both. It's always both. And Stewart understands that in a way that will be absolutely helpful for you in your storytelling journey. So here's my conversation with Stewart Cohen, and I hope that you love it. Stewart, welcome to the Storytelling Lab, my friend.
Thank you so much, Rain. Thanks for having me. I'm super psyched to be here. Super psyched to be here.
I love to hear that. I'm psyched to have you. Now, we were just talking about, I want to just jump right to where we were. You had this line, you're currently out in LA right now. You had this line, if I'm not shooting, I'm meeting people. I want to jump right into that, because to me, that peeks into the journey of any video-based creative. Maybe we can even scratch video. Any creative, you're out there, and your art, your craft is what you build a career off of. So
Correct.
When you're not working, what do you do to meet people, and why is that important to the job?
I think what I do, I reach out to all my old clients all the time, and I'm always looking for new clients. And it's truly, especially, say post-COVID, it's gotten so difficult to meet new people. And so, yeah, I'll organize, I'll go, there are a couple of groups that organize these meetings with producers and creative directors that I'm involved with. And, I'll put myself out there just to see what's out there, just to get new ideas also. I mean, it's not necessarily even looking for work. It's more about, hey, what's the vibe out there? What's going through people's heads? What's trending, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, honestly, you mentioned the pandemic. I was at a co-working space prior to that, and I miss it terribly. I'm here in my home office, and I'm pretty much a lone wolf almost 90+% of the time, unless I'm on set, right? And I miss that so much. And so often, when you're just in the location where other people are, organic connections happen. So like you don't even have to have an objective. Just talking to real people in real life and meeting them and then saying goodbye might plant the seed, because then when it's like, oh, we've got the, my friend has a shoot in Dallas or whatever, they think of you. Or my
Exactly.
friend is working on a documentary, they think of me, etc. So it's one of those things that like maybe doesn't give you an immediate ROI, but it's like scattering scattering around a bunch of seeds, right? You don't know what wildflowers will pop up.
And as you know, and I've learned, just because I've been in the business now for a while, it's a long road. And you could plant a lot of seeds, and you never know when one will pop up. And to your point about being a lone wolf, being in a home office, I couldn't do it. So when people ask me all the time, you know, why Dallas? Why not New York? Why not Los Angeles? And I always say, I mean, Dallas is a direct flight from anywhere. And I've been able to I have a nice loft studio, and I have a full-time crew. So there's always people around. So if we're not working, I might come back and say, hey, there's this story that I read in the paper that let's track this person down. Let's go shoot something. So it allows me to continually be doing projects regardless on jobs.
I think that's really crucial, just to find a story and want to go tell it, even if it's not quote unquote a job.
Absolutely.
That's a great little tip, like that I imagine gets overlooked a lot. But you're constantly working that muscle, and then also, like we just said, you're out there in the world. I mean, people see you shooting. Hey, what are you shooting? Shooting this. Oh,
right.
My company might need someone next month, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I have this theory, we talk about, what's the old saying, like, luck is preparation meeting opportunity or something like that. And
right.
I don't really believe in luck, but if I did, I visualize it like a little sporadic bolt of energy just randomly going around the world, right? And yeah, you could be sitting on your couch and perhaps that little stroke of luck drops into your lap. That's highly unlikely, right? Because you're stationary, it's moving all over the place. However, if you're out moving around in space, in the world, putting yourself in different positions, my theory is, at least following this metaphor, that little sporadic bolt of luck has a lot more probability or likelihood of hitting you when you're out in the world. So it's kind of along that same lines of, like, when you're prepared and there's an opportunity, that's the crossroads. But if you're just sitting there waiting for the call to come in for the great new job of 2025, my friend, it's probably not going to happen.
You're absolutely correct there. And I think luck favors the prepared mind,
Are you, speaking of kind of networking, I don't know if we use that word, are you on any sites or databases for creatives specifically? I've actually got a window open right now that I'm like filling out an invitation to Portrait. It's just like creative producers and stuff. And there's other similar ones. So I didn't know if you were part of any of those sorts of groups online.
Dude, Rain, I am part of anyone that comes my way, and nearly too many. And I've cycled through some, but I do feel like, over the years, I've spent a lot of money on some of those portals and so on. And I used to think if you commit to them, something will come your way. But I'm actually now starting to think I'd rather take that money and go places to meet people, but yes, I am on as many of them as possible. That's what I'll say.
But you find more ROI on the actual in real life, meeting with people.
I mean, you never know. You know that.
True.
You never know. I mean, and the one thing though is, if somebody meets you, the first thing they're going to do is Google you, and the more you come up, it's kind of like, it just justifies who you are, who you say you are.
Part of the reason why I was excited to chat with you is for my audience, I see the value that you bring to the show and to them, kind of twofold. One, there's a lot of video creators that follow the show that I think could learn how to potentially build a boutique agency off their craft. And also, there are a lot of people who might be more of the client avatar, so to speak, where they are looking for video production and they might be hiring someone like you. So we might kind of dance back and forth between the two, because I see a lot of value in both of those perspectives, leaning now more towards the latter and thinking about video production as a marketing tool or branding tool, storytelling tool. What are some of the ways that we as businesses and brands can use video storytelling that are often overlooked? I mean, we know kind of the basics, your brand story or your founder story, et cetera, et cetera. Are there creative ways that you work with clients in video that you wish more brands leveraged or pursued?
Well, I think people like stories.
Mm-hmm.
I think people like compelling stories. And I think they do, whether you're making a documentary, whether you're making a feature, or whether you're making a commercial, or even doing a still shoot. Like, what's the story there? And if you could give somebody insights into the story, you get them engaged. And one of the reasons that I was excited to come on the show is knowing your background on what you do with documentaries. So when I got into this business, the two things I wanted to do is travel and meet people. And I've done both. And what I love about meeting people, and when I started out, it was more real people that we were always working with. I get their stories. Like, I just have this knack of people open up to me, and people always say, how the heck did you get that out of them? And I just ask questions. And I love the human experience. And so what that's done for me, though, is when I get into the commercial space and say I'm dealing with an actor, I always have to get them to act. And a lot of times I need to give them a backstory. And a lot of times that backstory is just something off the top of my head. I'm like, I'll throw something at them, and it's like, okay, you're a KGB agent and you just snuck into the country, and how are you going to act? I need to create these scenarios for people to act in. And when I'm not doing that, I'm meeting real people and asking them how they got to that place in life. And I just I love that constant feed of what's going on in people's heads.
How do you get people on camera, which for me is even if I'm doing a commercial piece, it's almost still exclusively nonfiction. How do you get those people who are non-actors, normal people, if you will, to get comfortable to perform in a way that an actor would? Obviously, they'll probably never have that skill set, but they still have to show up in a way that is not awkward. And in order to do so, they have to feel comfortable and perhaps vulnerable. How do you encourage that? How do you create a space where they are comfortable?
And I think that is one of the defining factors of what makes a good storyteller. And somehow, not blowing any hot air up my, what, but it's just, I guess I have a disarming way, or I really make an effort to make a comfortable space for them, make it feel safe, make it feel like there's nothing wrong you could say, we're in this together. And I mean, I'll get in there and act goofy with people if I have to. I'll do whatever I have to do to get them relaxed. And sometimes, the cameras are rolling when they don't even know they're rolling, and you get the best stuff too. And sometimes you just have to shoot a lot, or, I think the beauty of video is you can edit it and you can make something happen. But I really enjoy when people actually, like we just finished a job last week, and 4 or 5 of the actors that we had throughout the week, they said, this was the most fun shoot we've ever had. It's just like, it was so relaxed, and you guys seemed professional, and we felt comfortable. And I think those are the key things that we as professionals really need to do to make people respond to us.
When did you start in the world of video?
20, I'm going to date myself, even though I don't have a beard like you. Um, uh, like 20, 25-ish years ago. So I was shooting film.
Oh yeah, you started with film.
Yeah.
What year? Okay, so around 2000.
Right around the turn of the century. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny when you say it that way.
I know.
Back in the turn of the century. And what led you to that? Like, were you always creative as a kid? Is this a field that you wanted or expected to go into, or was there a crazy turn in your life that led you there?
No, I started in still photography. Well, first I was going to be a doctor, then I was going to be a lawyer. Then I got the bug of still photography through some people that had come to my school and were doing lectures. And I worked as a photo assistant for still photographers, and which really got me to, well, I got to travel a lot and see a lot of the world and experience interacting with the working man, not actors, but just, and then, after that, I went back to film school at USC and kind of earned some film chops. And then, back in the day before digital, like I had a still career and a film career, and the two departments would not let you do both. And so my whole career, I've been striving when I get a project to do stills and film. And even if it's only a film job, I always have a still camera. And even if it's just a still job, I always have a motion camera. And I just love shooting, and I love getting in there and finding these special moments.
What are obviously there's a lot of similarities with still and video, right? It's visual storytelling, but when you just were kind of painting that picture about you always tend to have both of them on you. When do you lean one way versus the other? What is a image that needs to be captured in a still photo versus an image that needs to be captured in a video, and how do you determine that?
I think virtually anything could be, look, still photography is super powerful. Think of Pulitzer Prize images, and just, there's some super powerful imagery out there. And like just right here, I would take a portrait of you, but yet there's a deeper story when you start talking to you, and you can really dive in. And a lot of times, I mean, granted, the difference from what I do, like to tell a story in 30 seconds or in 60 seconds or even 90 seconds, that is a way harder craft than, when you see people doing a documentary that that kind of drifts around, I think what the commercial world has taught me is really to get to the crux of the story. And granted, there's always ancillary stuff you want to do to round out the story. But I tend to have learned to really, like, this is what we're trying to tell. And so that training has been good, just by hammering it into me that you got to tell it quicker.
So we were talking a moment ago about the relationship you have to establish with the actors or the non-actors, as it were, to help them perform better when you're doing some sort of, like a documentary or any nonfiction video production project. What about the client? So you talk a lot about this in your content, and this is something I feel most of the clients that I work with are long-term clients. At the very beginning of the conversation, you mentioned going back to existing clients, which I think is such a great, business approach to go deeper rather than, wider, trying to get a lot of one-off clients. And I love being able to do that, and I love establishing great relationships. It seems like you do too, but I don't want to speak for you. My question, though, is what do you look for in a client? How do you establish a collaborative working relationship that will yield the best results for both of you?
I think it's trust on both sides. They have to trust me. At the same time, there are plenty of clients that I admire. I admire what their vision, and I admire their dedication to telling the story. And I'm very open to input as well. And I think it's a collaboration of trust. I think that really helps. And those are the repeat clients. To your point about client interactions, and this is very strange that this story just happened the other day. I was home for one day and we were talking about what I do. My wife is in the business world and she was telling somebody about she's come on set like maybe twice in 20 years. And what she said she admired as she was really getting into her business career is the fact that aside from trying to create the creative process and direct a crew and direct talent, I also have multiple voices in my ear from the agency people and the clients that are all feeding input in. And I think maybe it's a little bit of my ADD or something, that I'm okay with a lot of input coming in and not like reacting in a crazy way and distilling it down to what really needs to happen and what you need to capture on film. And, but I think input from clients, first of all, they want to feel heard. Anybody wants to feel heard. And if you don't present a collaborative working space, people don't come back. And again, that has to be something innate that you do that. Look, I think the day of the diva is gone, but I learned early in my career that was not me. I just couldn't be a diva. There's some relationships, I'm sure you've had them, that, you have to talk to somebody that talks to somebody that talks to the ultimate decision. And I'm like, you know what? Just come stand next to the camera. It's okay. Just, I always say that to people. It's like, you know what? Just hang out with me for a minute. And they're there, for 15, 20 minutes. And then they're like, okay, I'm cool. I'll go back to Video Village. But I want to be collaborative because it's like, again, back to knowing and wanting to know people. I want to know what the vision is. I want to, I really strive to get everybody's input because I got to tell you, there's a lot of talented people out there,
Yeah, absolutely. What part of your role or position is or includes educating the client? How much of that is part of your collaboration with them? Not necessarily hand-holding, that's got a negative connotation, but just if, and not necessarily if there are disagreements, but just as you're working together to create this great piece, do you find yourself having to kind of slip into a mode where you're teaching them essentially?
I mean, I hate to use that word teaching them. Yeah. But I hate to use the word teaching, but more about listening, reacting, and showing. And, sometimes they'll ask a question and I'll say why we're doing something. And sometimes I'll say, give us a second. Let us just kind of work this out. We'll get to the ultimate solution that you're looking for, but it might be a little circuitous. So I don't think it's a lot of teaching. I try not, if it is, I just really try to lead by example.
I think that's well said. Talk to me about the intersection of, we've mentioned this before, of storytelling and the role that it plays in commercial work and advertising. I think that if we aren't careful, some brands can focus a little too much on wanting to tell everybody about what they have to offer. And maybe, again, I'm generalizing here, and maybe thinking, oh, the storytelling thing is nice, but that's not what we need to make things happen to get our, to make money.
Right. That's correct. You're 100% correct. But think about, there were a couple of spots, and I'm trying to think who it was for, on the Super Bowl last year, that they went back to storytelling. There was one about the little girl that planted the potato. I think it was for a chips company or Frito-Lay or something. But she nurtured, this plant, and it showed, her through the seasons. I don't know if you recall it, but it was a story, and you got engaged with the story. And I really think stories are more powerful than slamming somebody over the head with, what I do is perfect. You need to buy this. And again, to your point, I know you work in a lot of pharma world or the medical world. So we do a lot of that as well. And a lot of that is telling the stories of real people, of patients, of, what's their life like? How did they live with what they have? And how is, like, at least in the case of pharma, what is this medication doing to help me? And how do we illustrate that? And how do you empower them to tell it and for it to, look and feel good?
At what point in the business journey, let's say I've got a startup, at what point do we really start to look at video as a strategy? Is this something that, we lead with? Is it something that we establish our product first, our brand first, and then look into how we're going to market it? Where do you put it in terms of the sequencing?
Oh, that's a toughie because you're putting on the client hat there. I don't know, honestly. I think a brand story is always important. I think a brand story gets customers. I think people could, if you think about, say, back in the day, you think about Nike. I mean, they created stories. It was brand stories, and people wanted to gravitate toward Nike. I think disseminating your media today is a bigger challenge because there's so many different platforms. And how do you do it where it's sticky enough and engaging enough for people to really follow you? And I think it's something that could start day one, really. Look, a founder story. I mean, you could be sitting there, in your cool office there, and you could be talking about what you're striving to do. And I mean, but that's the beginning, and it's just as valid as anything else.
I think it's really cool that you bring up Nike, which of course, we're not the only ones to think and know that about their storytelling. But I was coincidentally just this morning, I've got a new book coming out next year, and was writing about Nike's storytelling approach. In fact, I think they may be the first person to have, or first brand rather, to have designated a person in the chief storyteller role back in the 90s. If they weren't the first company, they were one of the first. And so that was the lens that I was talking about them. But 100% agree. Like they have had a storytelling culture from the get-go, like even before they were Nike. What are some of the other brands that you look up to that do it really well in terms of visual storytelling?
Oh boy, it changes. Like you see something and it changes all the time. I mean, I guess you could look at Apple. You know, you could look at, I don't know, the story is a tough one. That's a tough question. I don't know. Nothing comes off the top of my head, but I do know that the stories are things that we remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about what's your stance? I know this is, I don't a hot topic these days, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it to anybody that's creating video. Where does AI fall into your practices at the moment?
Well, I think that's a valid question for today, and I think it's a question we get asked every day, and I'm sure we ask ourselves that every day. And I am it's a tool. The genie's out of the bottle. It's going to happen. I say we use it where we need to use it. And I think you need to stay one step ahead of it in terms of, our creativity and our engagement and our compassion is something that AI will never be able to replicate. But at the same time, AI is going to be able to help us with a lot of different aspects of our productions.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to shift a little bit to brand and brand identity. I know you think about this a lot and talk about this a lot. And it's a similar question that I asked earlier about the video strategy and kind of when that falls into the sequence of events for a business. I also see people maybe focus on product first and then try to figure out brand later. And I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, but I want to hear your stance. It's like, how important, like, what is the importance of branding to a business? Brand awareness, brand identity, brand narrative, etc.
Okay, well, you need a product first, obviously. But branding, okay, you could look at, we did a project years ago for Herradura tequila, where we went to Tequila, Mexico, and we filmed the process of making tequila in this hacienda that had been making it for, I don't know, over 100 years. That they were product first. And it was funny. Somebody on that project mentioned Patron and how that became a branding story first. So
Yeah.
they had a good bottle and they branded it and they put $50 million behind it. And what some people in Mexico were saying is, but they didn't care about the agave and where it was grown and the process. It was more about the brand story. So you can't knock them for it because I think they did a brilliant job. And, you know, the other brands that go product first, you know, it's this balance. You know, you need to have both, because without a product, you really don't have anything. You know, and because you have air, and if you're just branding air, you know, you might get a customer once, but you're not going to get them a second time. So you need the product. And but branding, if you could connect with a group of people through your branding, you're definitely on the right path.
Do you ever create like branded content or branded documentaries that aren't necessarily direct commercials or even include the company, the brand in them? It's more about kind of the topic. You know where I'm going?
Yes, I do. I know exactly where you're going.
Okay.
And
Talk to me about that.
We have done some of those. And again, it's not the top of mind right now, but it becomes less product specific. And, oh, I know one. For instance, we did something, and it was for a medical device company that had to do with insulin pumps. So they had a product that was a very well-respected product in that space. But we told the story of diabetes. What is diabetes? How do you get it? How do you prevent it? What happens in your body? What could you do to prevent it? Never discussed their product at all until right at the end, there was a little tag on it. And I think it takes it takes some guts to do that, I think, because what they were doing is really helping the whole industry as a whole. And it was less about them, more about awareness. And I think that was just, recently in the last year or so. And I think that resonates well with, what you're referring to. I think telling a story and they just happen to be using XYZ product is a good approach. You know, obviously you show the product at a certain point, but I mean, you could go back to the early days of Nike. You know, it's a Michael Jordan, but then you see his shoe. Oh, it's got a swoosh on it. You know, so again, it was the story about him, or some of their spots, like about the Olympics. Those are the ones that always get me. But they're telling stories about athletes. They're not telling stories about Nike, and I think those are so powerful because it's really just speaking to the human being and the human experience. And I think it stays with people. That really, really stays with people.
Yeah, I got to go back since you brought up Nike again. So I'll tell you a quick little story, but it plays right into what you were just saying. So their first Just Do It spot for that campaign that has been, legendary and iconic, that Dan Wyden created. It was I want to say like 88. But it didn't feature any athlete, Michael Jordan or anything like that, even though they had signed him already. It was this 80-year-old marathon runner named Walt Stack, I think, and he was running on the Golden Gate Bridge. And they filmed him, from a really high angle, so you could see the whole bridge and just see this little guy running with shirtless. And they zoom in on him. You could tell he's an elderly guy. And he's like, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, people ask me every day, how do I keep my teeth from chattering in the wintertime? And there's, of course, pause for dramatic effect. And then he comes back in and says, I leave them in the locker room.
That's pretty funny.
And
Yeah,
that
that's
was it.
pretty
And it was
funny.
like, Nike,
Yeah.
just do it. And so to your point, storytelling didn't say anything about the shoe, didn't even show a swoosh. I mean, it was just
Right.
about this normal individual who wakes up and runs every 17 miles every day. And, you know, made a little joke. There's a little levity there, but it was just his story in a 30-second spot. And that launched a decades long, you know, campaign. But yeah, had nothing to
Okay,
do
but
with the shoe at all.
you weren't even born then.
I was born then. Thank you very much. I was a child, but I was born.
I need to find that because I've
I'll send
never
it to
seen
you.
it. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
it's so
great.
cool. I've been diving deep into all of that for this book. And so when I found that, I was like, oh my God, this is gold. And very soon after, they started having Bo Jackson, Wayne Gretzky, Michael
Sure.
Jordan, Charles Barkley on them. But that first one was an 80-year-old runner on the Golden Gate Bridge.
But there's
Um,
and granted we're gravitating toward Nike, but there's so many brands that have used stories and but I think the root of the whole what we're trying to say here is that really that human connection that a story creates is really what's going to resonate. And that's what will be remembered. And I think as a director, the biggest challenge is how do you tell the story in a way that is um, seamlessly done? It's not like clobbering somebody over the head. You're telling it in a narrative fashion that is engaging. And I think that's the craft that we work in.
as a creative, you and we are fortunate enough that we get to do what we love for our jobs, which is great. Do you find that creative itch is scratched by your work, or do you seek out other opportunities to do projects that are just creative for creativity's sake, or do you get that artist side of you fulfilled by the work that you do?
Oh, no, 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 no. We're always doing stuff on my own, like always. And I think, like, say, a couple years ago, we started something called Her Story, which was I just looked for young women that were doing amazing things, didn't matter where they were in the country. I hired a producer to help find them. And we found some women that either started foundations or this was the one was the youngest person in government in New Hampshire. One started a business in high school. And we just did a short form documentary on them, like a short form, like a 5-minute deal. And we just went and spent the day with them. But and to me, that's what feeds me. I mean, that could have been a job, but I still did it on my own. We've done, um, I've done projects on identical twins. I've done projects on all sorts of things. Like if we're not shooting, I'm either looking to meet people or shooting something for myself. And there's another thing we just looked at yesterday, which is really, really funny. So I don't know if it's like this in North Carolina, but in Dallas, a lot of people who buy houses level them and build bigger houses. And a couple years ago, I got lucky enough to know somebody that was about to demo a house. And I asked them if I could get into the house before they demoed it and just do whatever I wanted to. And they're like, sure, sure. So it was like we shot for a few days. We did different stories. But the last one, of course, there were, kids in there like skateboarding and spray painting and busting walls and stuff like that. And then I became known as the guy, like when there are teardowns, like I've done a couple of them now. And yesterday at the studio, we watched some videos going back years of all the different teardown shoots we've done. And to me, it's so much fun. And one of the things I'm showing here today to some producers is I'm showing them some of the teardown parties next to the jobs I get based on them. And so really my personal work is what gets me commercial work. And years ago we did another thing. We went, I'm going to date myself, but this goes back to, early 2000s. Someone put the bug in my ear to go to Cuba and shoot something. and it was going to be just, you know, the beautiful Cubans, and we brought clothes, like, so it was like a fashion story in rundown Cuba. And again, it didn't have a whole lot of direction. It was just, let's just go down there, see what happens. So we went down there and shot it, and I produced a little book on it, and we have a video on it. And when I tell you that that body of work has transcended into so much work downstream. And again, that's not why I did it. I did it for the adventure. Like, I do everything for the adventure. Like, when I did the identical twins, it was like, I want to go meet all these identical twins. And it was really cool until they had a social event at the identical twins convention that I was standing alone, and these two twins were talking to me, and they said, "Where's your twin?" And I said, "No, I'm here just shooting this." And they didn't even they turned around and walked away. They weren't interested because I didn't have a twin. But the point is these little adventures that I find are really, in the end, what ends up driving anything commercially.
Dude, I think that's such a cool overlap. I was writing that down, that, your personal work helps get that commercial work. And I think that's something that a lot of creators that are doing it for commerce, that are doing it for a career, might overlook. Or, sometimes it just you're tired, right? You're exhausted and you want to take a break. But that's a great reason to just go make something. That's what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing, you said the word adventure, but it's like your curiosity leads you so much, and you just go make something. And like we said at the very beginning, it's planting these seeds. I'm curious, when you're creating a project, let's go back to the client. Like, if you're creating a project for a client, do you follow any story structure? Do you like to keep it in a certain framework? Or are you kind of shooting from the hip, and each project is different and takes you on a different story journey? Or do you have like a style of a structure that you like to bring to the table?
I mean, I think if you're telling a story, we create, we scout it, and we create where we're going to shoot it, and we create storyboards. So, at least we have a framework. Granted, 9 times out of 10, you might take a left turn on the day or during the production.
True.
But yeah, we have a structure going into it for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's, you need that. As much as I like to shoot from the hip, my producers would prefer that I stick to the script a little more.
What do you tell a potential client that isn't sure if they should leverage video or not? How do you sell someone on video?
I usually show them something. And I mean, depends on how on the fence they are. But usually you could show them work that you feel is powerful, and you could talk them through it. It's really hard to get somebody to do something they don't want to do, especially when it involves a lot of money. So, you can't really push that, but you could definitely show them some case studies as to what we have done and what benefits they can get from that. And I think that a lot of times sways them to your side of thinking. And a lot of times, it might take 6 months. It might take doing a smaller project for them. And I mean, that's what, circling back to where the conversation started about, our road is long. And my hope is that relationships endure, and that we could grow with people, and they could grow with us. And there's nothing better than, okay, I got a story. This is, I don't know if it's a great story, but I got a job like right at the beginning of my career. And it was a half a day still shoot in a factory in Fort Worth, Texas, for a guy who had a small agency. Fast forward 20 years, I had worked with this agency, I'm not going to say every year, but maybe every year, every couple of years. And we got into these huge TV productions. So I took, granted, he helped me grow and I helped them grow, but it went from a half a day still shoot to, like a $500,000 TV shoot. And that's just staying in touch and developing and being a part of the conversation all the way through. And, and I think that's what's important. I mean,
All right, before we go, I really want to talk to you about identity. I know this is something that you focus on a lot. I know didn't you have like a coffee table book a while back, a photo book based on that concept. It's something that I dwell on a lot personally, but also like what we're talking about today, brand identity. Which I think is so crucial, like understanding who we are. And a wise man once said, our true identity probably lies at a midpoint between who we think we are and how others perceive us. I won't spoil who that wise man was. I'm just
want to
kidding.
know.
It was you.
I want to know.
That's why you want to know. Let them know publicly. No, I love that so much. And it's similar to something I say, which is like the story that we tell others and the stories that others tell about us. And I just thought that was such a great way to put it. I mean, I perked right up when I saw that, man. And I think it's very true. So this is kind of a broad question. It might turn into a few different answers, but I just want to end kind of talking about that notion of us as individuals, as creators like you and I, but also brands, the people that we help. How important is it for us to find that intersection? How do we help control, if we're a brand, the story that others tell about us? Sorry, I'm stumbling over those words. How do we create the identity that we hope for?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. And what I will say is my identity project came at a time when, before small digital live action cameras were accessible. And so it became a coffee table book, a print project. But what I was interested in, and the question I asked everybody in that project, is what makes you unique as an individual? And we probably photographed 150 people. Didn't matter where they were. We would get on a plane and go. And I got to spend time with some really well-known people, as well as some people that lived on the street, and I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about people by doing that. Now, looking back, I wish, it was the day of having a small video camera that I could have just recorded some of that as well. And, but the point is, to find one's identity, I think you need to be open to exploring, again, what people think you are and who you think you are, and being very brutally honest with yourself. And I think for a company, especially, I mean, it's a little different, if you talk about personal identity versus a corporate identity. But I think corporate identity, I mean, you need a good leader. You need somebody that has a vision and that could keep everybody on track. The problem is, we see it every day is, one division goes this way, one division goes that way. I mean, so I think you need a core statement of who you are, say, as a company, who the company is. And I think as an individual, I mean, I think it's okay to sit down once a year or a couple times a year and write down, what really drives you. I mean, the hardest thing is when somebody asked me when I was working on that project, well, what would you write? Like what, who are you as an individual? And I didn't even think of that when I was asking them that. And I sat down to write it. And it was just like, oh my God, this is really not that easy a question. And so I think it's an age old thing. And I think your identity evolves in time. And I think what's really cool is continually embracing every stage you're at and understanding that it's going to change, but that's okay. But I think if you don't, like when I have an idea, say for a personal project, I have to do it then because it's going to be gone in 2 years because I'm going to be on to something else. So it really sometimes is like, and you talk about being tired or being lazy. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to swear. It's like, it's like, I need to make that happen. Because if the idea leaves my head, it's gone. And if I put it on film it's going to be with me for the rest of my life. So it's really, really important as a creator to really, when you get those moments of inspiration, to act on it and to do things and to go out, whatever it may be, and to interpret it and to have something, a visual representation of where you were on that day or that part of your life. And I think that's what you get remembered by. That's what people will say, oh, that's who Rain was. You know, that's what he does. That's who he is. And I think it's really cool. And there's some great stuff out there. There's some super talented people.
Absolutely. Speaking of kind of this journey, this ever-evolving journey that we are on, and thinking about your kind of curiosity that drives you, your adventurous spirit, what do you hope for the next stage? What do you think, what would you like to happen in the next few years of your journey? Or do you even try to control it like that? Are you just, following the thread?
That's a really great question. I think there have been times throughout my career and our journey, so to speak, my journey, that you get lazy and you don't realize how lucky you are. And maybe that comes with having a little bit of age now, but just to realize how fortunate we've been, one, to be born, or I wasn't born in this country, but to live in this country, to have the ability to do what we do and have the ability to call your own shots. And I think once in a while when you realize that, it's like, wow. So I really need to take advantage of that. And at the beginning of this year, I said to my wife, with all the changes in technology and media, I said, this year, I'm just going to go hard. And she just looks at me like, so what have you been doing for the last 20 years? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go really hard. Like, I want to lean into this. I'm having so much fun, and I do believe that one door opens another. And so you got to keep opening doors because you never know what door you're going to go through. And so for the next few years, it's like, look, things are changing, things are evolving, and let's just get on the train and figure out, like, have some great adventures. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago that was they were super surprised that I had been doing this my whole career. They're like, what do you mean you've done it your whole career? I'm like, yeah, I love it. It's great. I mean, I have the best life. And they're like, well, doesn't everybody change careers a couple of times? And I'm like, I think I was too busy to realize that I was supposed to do that. But I just think the next couple of years will be ever changing like the last few. But I really want to cognizantly lean into it and really produce some great stuff.
Last question, with all of the new tools that we have and the democratization of video storytelling, meaning the ease of access these days. When you started and I wasn't too far after you, things are very big, very expensive. There was, a lot of barriers to entry. Now there's not. And you have a lot of video content creators because there's a big demand for content. What's your advice to someone who maybe is fresh out of college, wants to go into this field, create a video production agency? What do you tell that person who is looking forward into their journey and trying to take that first couple of steps?
I think it's a really good question. I think you need to believe in yourself. Number one, I think you need to really put in the work. I think a lot of young people are afraid of meeting people, are afraid of picking up the phone. I think a lot of people, and I've had some work for me that's, they watch something on YouTube and they think this is the way you're supposed to do it. I think it's an organic process, what we do. I think you need to be involved with organizations, with your community, be friends with other filmmakers. I mean, it's a 360 thing. And find your tribe, and never settle. Never settle because it's continually changing, and be okay with being okay, so to speak. Not every year is going to be a great year. Mm-hmm. Not every job is going to make you money. Not every adventure is going to be memorable, but it's just part of the journey,
Awesome. We're kind of back full circle where we started, get out there and meet people. And that's exactly what you're doing this weekend. So, man,
indeed.
I appreciate you being here. This was awesome to learn a little bit more about your journey. And it's inspiring. I love the themes that have kind of naturally emerged and revealed themselves through the conversation.
Well, I love the guests you've had and some of the conversations you've had. And I got to tell you, it's been super really enlightening listening to some people. I'm like, it's been blowing my mind, because I did a deep dive on you, in the last week, of course, and listened to as many as I could. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be great. So,
Man, I appreciate that so much. Sometimes when you create stuff, even like this, you put it out there to the world and you keep moving, and you don't necessarily think about it or hear back all the time. So when you do, it really means a lot. And I love it. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have the people on that I do, including you. My favorite part by far is like talk about connections, right? Now we're connected, right? Forever.
Exactly.
And we might work together one day, we might not, but we will always know each other from this. And that's so super important and special to me that I'm grateful every day for it. And I appreciate you being here, my friend.
And then if next time you roll through Dallas or we're in North Carolina, we're going to do a new portrait of you for your podcast because you're way cooler. You're way cooler in real life than that picture.
Oh,
we got to
like that. Yeah, Let's do it. I might be in Dallas. I got to... For whatever reason, I'm breeding a new generation of Cowboys fans who have yet to see any of the glory days like I saw, so we might be out there soon.
Give a call, and if you're ever buying tickets, you're going to go to a game, let me know. I'll jump in too.
Thanks, brother. Good to see you.
Right.
Appreciate you.
Take care of yourself. Be good.
My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to the podcast. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.